You are listening to How to Feel Like a Midlife Goddess, the place where midlife women come to feel supported, inspired and understood. I'm Amanda. I'm a nutritionist and health coach and a champion of women like you in their 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond. And I'm here to remind you that you can feel like a midlife goddess at any age. And we know it's all about how you feel rather than how you look. So this is a podcast that's going to help you, step into your strongest, healthiest and most empowered midlife. And I hope I can give you the conversations that are going to help you do just that. So thank you for being here. And I hope you enjoy the podcasts. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? I just thought I would quickly say hi before the podcast starts. And you're in for a treat. Kirsten's got lots of brilliant information. But this podcast is a little bit late and I'm really sorry. I injured my shoulder over Christmas doing some weights in front of the TV, which makes me sound like I'm a complete gym bunny. I'm not. I just did one workout between Christmas and New Year and I had a 5 kilogram dumbbell in one arm and I was doing repetitions and I must have had my technique wrong. Anyway, I felt my shoulder crick and I kind of ignored it. And 2 or 3 days later, I was in complete agony. And it's really impeded me working in January because I've had to be quite mindful of how much time I spend on a laptop. Anyway, fortunately, it's well on the mend now. There's nothing wrong with my shoulder. It was a pinched nerve, which, gosh, you can't believe how much pain that gives you. And it's taken all this time for it to ease off and, acupuncture, physio session, etc. But anyway, I am on the mend, but I just wanted to pop on and say, sorry that it's so late. I haven't forgotten you. I'm still here. I also just wanted to remind you, if you listened to the last podcast, I am starting a new podcast, a private podcast called Be Healthy with Amanda. And there's more information about this at the end of this podcast if you want to listen. But simply put, it's a weekly podcast where I will be giving you 2 weekly objectives that you can follow easily, keeping you on track, a bit like your nutritionist, that you check in with. You can download the podcast on a Monday morning. I'll also be offering selected discount for any supplements that I might be suggesting could be useful to you. And also there'll be a recipe link so that the recipes that I talk about you can easily download. So I really want to support you in a more structured way. And by supporting you weekly, I think it's going to help keep you motivated week in, week out. And this podcast will continue, but it will be, it's every other week and it'll be a longer form. But the Be Healthy with Amanda podcast is just 20 minutes and you just download it on a Monday morning, get your objectives for the week. And it'll be, I think, quite inspiring and motivating to you. I hope so anyway. And I'm offering all of this for just £5.99 a month. So I do hope you will come and join me and I can support you and you can support me to keep doing it. And it's going to be really great. I think I'm so excited to share the first few episodes with you. So I will leave the link in the show notes and you can sign up and it will be starting on Monday, the 2nd of February. Anyway, let's talk to Kirsten. Let me introduce you to Kirsten Chick. She is a nutritional therapist, educator, author of Nutrition Brought to Life, and speaker whose work is grounded in science as well as her own personal experience. Kirsten has also completed additional postgraduate training to support clients with cancer, and she has a master's in nutrition science and practice, which led to a research paper on mushrooms, gut microbiota and cancer, which was published in the peer-reviewed European Journal of Integrative Medicine. Now, I came across Kirsten about a month ago at a medicinal mushrooms seminar in London, where she gave a brilliant talk on how she uses mushrooms to support clients who've had cancer or are going through chemotherapy. And I was so inspired by her knowledge and compassion that I knew I had to bring her onto the podcast to learn more. So, Kirsten, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's fantastic to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
So let's get started. I'm sure everyone's curious to know, someone meeting you for the first time, how did you find your way into the world of nutrition?
Yes, well, it was over 20 years ago now. I had a friend at the time who had been training as a nutritional therapist and some friends who were interested in nutrition. And I guess that had rubbed off a little bit, but essentially I'd never really paid much attention to looking after myself. So I'd grown up with a diet that wavered between kind of mixed poor and okay, let's say. And then as I started to take control of my own kind of nutrition and eating, it just got steadily worse. I became vegetarian. I was one of those vegetarians that largely lived off kind of peanut butter and toast chips, pasta, that kind of thing. Really not looking after myself very well at all, but surviving. But then I had a cancer diagnosis. And Gosh. It was quite, I was in my late 20s. It was a shock on some levels, on many levels. It was difficult to know how to process all of that. I ended up being at Guy's Hospital for 3 weeks, having various surgeries, and everyone I knew, I knew very few people in London at that particular time, but people were bringing me up food from Brighton, or I had a lovely friend, Anna, who was bringing me food she was travelling across London with home cooked fare. And I got a real bee in my bonnet. I even had the hospital chef up to visit me. He was driving to the supermarket on his way to work every day to pick me up a bag of salad so that I could get some green leaves inside me. So this all came from, I don't know, something inside me was just really adamant that I needed to pay more attention to what I was eating. So that's where it all started. My recovery involved lots of qigong and tai chi as well, and body work. And so my boyfriend, who's now my husband, bought me a book called Healing with Whole Foods, which is a kind of traditional Chinese medicine take on nutrition. It's a wonderful book. I still have it. And I read it from cover to cover. And then I thought, right, okay, I want to train. I want to become a nutritional therapist. So it kind of came out of nowhere, but it was a very strong urge. It was like I really woke up one morning thinking, this is what I want to do with my life. Like a really strong knowing that this was the way to go.
So Kirsten, what were you doing before? I mean, so you're in your late 20s, you have this cancer diagnosis when most of us are, I was the same, eating toast and baked beans and thinking that was healthy. Yeah, so it must have been so difficult for you to just deal with that. But what can you tell us a bit more about the cancer? What was the cancer?
Yeah, it was one of the rarer ones. It was a type of sarcoma. It was in the top of my leg. So it was very encapsulated. I was lucky, despite it got diagnosed. It took a long time to diagnose because no one really knew what it was. But eventually they did diagnose it. But it was so well encapsulated that surgery was, I had 2 or 3 surgeries in the end, but that was all it took. I didn't need any chemotherapy or radiotherapy, and for that I'm incredibly grateful. So my background at the time, I'd been working in the entertainment industry. So I'd been putting on big events, and I'd been partying like most 20-year-olds. So been having lots of fun, but burning the candle at both ends, and like I say, really not looking after myself. So I was very used to being busy and organised and focused, and very good at that, very good at getting things done. And that's translated over into being a nutritional therapist as well. But prior to that, I'd actually studied languages, and it's been really nice and I always had a kind of academic side to me as well. I went for languages because I really enjoyed them, but I could equally have gone for sciences originally. So when I came back and did my MSc, so it was a science master's, that was really lovely to be able to go back into academia. Actually, I've been teaching on degree courses for years now, so that side of me has been quite satisfied anyway. So it's been a nice journey where I've been able to mix the science, the practice. I'm known as the pragmatic nutritionist. I've been called that more than once. So just to really have a good blend of the science and the practice and the compassion, as you said, really what is actually going to help this person in front of me. So it's funny, isn't it, how you develop a lot of skills along the way that can help you with where you end up.
How old are you now, if you don't mind me asking, Kirsten?
I'm about to turn 56.
My goodness, really? Wow, I'm shocked. Yeah, I thought you were a lot. Yeah, I'm 56. I thought you were a lot younger than me. Wow, you're obviously, doing it with the nutrition now and your lifestyle. And I haven't read all of your book yet, but I've read some of it, and I kind of like the way that you talk about nutrition, but you also talk about looking after yourself in other ways, because we know as nutritional therapists it's not just about having the perfect diet. There's lots of other things that have to fall in place for it all to work and synchronize into a sort of healthy cells, etc. But you make your cancer sound like, oh well, it just kind of happened, and I mean, it must have been, how long, what symptoms did you have, how long were you being treated? I mean,
it was pretty devastating at the time. I was getting funny sensations down my leg, pain, like a really sharp pain in my foot, and then I found a lump. But they didn't know what the lump was for ages. They were like, they didn't think it was cancer. They didn't recognize it. Yeah, so it was an odd one. I didn't notice any other kind of symptoms. Like I wasn't particularly fatigued. My lifestyle was quite tiring, so it was hard to know what was what. I did lose a lot of weight in hospital as a result of surgeries, but I hadn't really before. There was none of the things that you would look out for. And everyone kept saying, oh, it can't be cancer, you're too young. And it still shocks me that gets said even today to so many people. But yes, it was so physically, because one of the surgeries that I had, my stitches split on the way out of surgery, and they couldn't re-stitch them back up again. So I essentially had a gaping hole in my leg that had to heal from the inside out, and I was on crutches for a long time. So for somebody in their late 20s, that was quite, with a new boyfriend, that was quite hard.
He obviously stuck around as he became the husband. So
yeah, absolutely.
It could have been that bad.
Yeah. But I'd say I was very depressed and probably some kind of post-traumatic stress for at least a couple of years afterwards. And I think I was heading in that way anyway. I think I was heading for a crash, but this escalated it, and it was really hard to dig my way out of it. And it's that classic, once everything's over and I got the all clear and everyone's going, hooray, isn't this brilliant? And let's get back to normal again. And I just couldn't. I was drowning for a long time afterwards. So it took a lot of work to pull myself up. And I'd say, so Andy, who was my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, he was very supportive with that. So he was the one that started going to Tai Chi classes and yoga and saying, oh, you should come along too. And that kind of thing. So, he was obviously doing it for himself as well, because it was a kick up the backside for him too. But, he dragged me along to all of these things. And that really, really helped me. A lot of this work, I really valued that it was helping to reconnect me again. I felt so disconnected, and I had done for a long time, to be fair. Felt really disconnected from myself, let alone from my environment. And I understand now that that's all part of trauma, not just from the cancer, but other just kind of life things that I hadn't processed properly had really disconnected me in lots of different ways. So it kind of escalated the crash, but also escalated me working really hard to try and understand that and process a lot of that. So along with that came a lot of learning about how important it is to feel connected, to feel centered, to trust myself, to trust my instinct, and so to value myself, the whole thing about self-esteem. And that's tied up with nutrition anyway, isn't it? We can't nourish ourselves if we don't feel that we're worth that. So that whole self-worth thing I had to really address a lot. So I see all of that tied up in nutrition. I don't separate out the work I did on my physical health, my emotional, spiritual, psychological health. Everything I did, I see as part of my nourishment. And my
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was just thinking as you were saying that, Kirsten, this podcast is called How to Feel Like a Midlife Goddess. And a lot of people in perimenopause and menopause have that experience that you're having. Like they suddenly feel they have to do a lot of work on themselves, and they recognize, things that they've suppressed for maybe decades. And suddenly they confront you in perimenopause and menopause for whatever reason. They're there and you can't ignore them any longer. But you obviously had that realization much younger.
Yeah, I got a jump start.
Yeah. And you've been kind of working on yourself, ever since. Yeah. So, what do you think were some of the most important sort of lessons that helped you through that period? And, you can help you to relate to other people that have had a cancer diagnosis.
There were lots of amazing lessons, actually. One lesson was about how I connect with other people, trusting my friendship. So this was a self-worth thing I had. I've always been surrounded by incredible, amazing people, and had that, I wish I was as good as them, and I'm just kind of, here by accident. And I had to really acknowledge that actually I was there because these people loved me as well. And that was a hugely important shift to find my place there and to find my self-worth there. That was really great. I learned a lot about the importance of feeling grounded and centered, but not stuck and stagnant, and that there's a difference between the two. So that was what I learned. I learned to trust my instincts, and this is something that I've been repeating. So at the time of my diagnosis, there was very little understanding of integrative oncology, or how to use things like nutrition and movement and things like that to support a cancer treatment or cancer journey. And in the world of nutrition, there was this thing about, don't have mushrooms because mushrooms are damp and they are yeast fungi, and that's not the energy that you want to be encouraging here. But there was an inner bit of me that was like, mushrooms, eat mushrooms. It wasn't my brain. It wasn't like even a craving. It was just like an inner, you need mushrooms. And I listened to that, and I had lots of mushrooms. And I'm so glad I did, because it turns out I was right to want the mushrooms, because knowledge evolves all of the time. We learn more all of the time. And what we've learned in recent years in the West, which is what was known in the East a long time earlier, is that mushrooms are fantastic in this kind of situation. And the other one that I really strongly craved was seaweed. And I just really wanted seaweed as well. And it turns out that the minerals and B vitamins in seaweed would all have been really fantastic for what I was going through at the time.
Kirsten, are you a spiritual person? You say, this message came from within, or you just knew that you had to start nourishing yourself, slow down, really start valuing yourself. And then you also had this and I got to eat mushrooms and spirulina, seaweed. Seaweed, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like, where do you think that came from?
Yeah.
That inner knowing.
I think that the easy answer is yes, I am, but there's a much more complicated answer than that, because I mean, really, I don't know. I'm also very cynical. So it's a real balance. As a child growing up, I grasped onto religion for a while, and I went to a school that had its own chapel. So that was something that I could easily find. It was my place where I found something else and something bigger. but then became very cynical about religions. And so the nature connection became very important for me. And then in my adult life, I've kind of really danced with various kinds of spirituality and explored various different ways to connect with spirituality, and then had times in my life where I lost a friend at one point and very much felt at that time, oh, that's my spirituality disconnection. I literally felt like somebody pulled the plug out and hid the plug. And it took me a few years to start to find that plug again and be able to plug it back in. But again, it's never been the same since. So yeah, I guess yes, but in the sense of I'm aware that my brain is not it. I'm aware there's more to it than my thoughts and my brain. But other than that, I don't know what it is. But I know that it's useful to connect in with it, and that anything that helps to connect in and feel that you're part of a bigger picture and somehow tap into knowledge and wisdom and experience from a bigger picture is really crucial. I guess that would sum it up for me right now.
Yeah. And I suppose I was talking to somebody yesterday who is a yoga teacher and on the podcast, and she was just saying how, we just don't get still, a lot of us, to actually listen to that inner voice, that instinct, whatever it is, that we don't really fully understand. And it's so true, isn't it? When you're rushing about and life is hectic. And I think it feels like it's sped up in the last decade. I don't know if you've had that, but, because there's so many more avenues you can go down, and, there's sort of information overload. It's great in one way, and it's kind of like, overwhelming in another. And a lot of us do, that plug becomes, unplugged, and it is hard to sort of connect back into yourself, isn't it? And I think I find that a lot of women of our age, they do start thinking about the bigger picture, and, people, obviously losing parents, it does make you think about what's this all about, kind of things. Yeah, it sounds like you tapped into that a lot earlier.
Yeah, and I lost a parent when I was 17 as well. So, and a significant grandparents at young ages. So, yeah, I guess I did have some of those experiences earlier. And it's interesting what you were saying about connecting in, because that's something that I work with everyone that comes to see me. I mean, about 50% of my clients now are cancer patients, but 50% of them aren't. But with everyone, what I'm really looking for is what's their connection to themselves, to their food, to their nourishment, to their environment, to the people around them. And what I'm listening for as well is, how are they approaching their food? Are they really confused because there's so much information from being thrown at them? These days it's social media. It used to be magazines and newspapers, but with social media, it's really ramped up, hasn't it? And especially with menopause, it's like, buy this, do this, buy this, do this, buy this, do this, everywhere you look. And once your social media knows your algorithm and knows how old you are, you just get it all. And so our brains are tossed around in this, and all of this kind of can easily drown out our instincts. So I'm listening for how much of that is going on, how much are these people being overwhelmed and overloaded by information, or the person in front of me, and also how much of what they're doing nutritionally and for their well-being is now fear-driven, either as a result of that or as a result of an experience like getting a cancer diagnosis or another diagnosis, or having lots of issues in the family that you're trying to avoid. Fear is a natural, helpful response in that it can kind of alert us to threat and keep us on our toes. But it's useful for that in itself. So we listen to it, we act on it, then that's great. But if we listen to it and then we're frozen by it, or we're overwhelmed by it, or we're stuck in the fear, then that is a huge stress on our bodies. And we know from, millennia of wisdom and experience, and then also from a few years of science now, that stress has a very real physical impact on our immune systems, on our cardiovascular systems, on our neurological systems, on our digestion, on every aspect of our physical well-being. So if we're stuck and frozen in that fear, then that's a disconnect in itself. So what really makes me smile is when I've been working with somebody, and because of the way that we're working and because of other things that they're doing as well, they're now saying, right, well, I stopped doing this thing because I found that I just wasn't drawn to it anymore. I've started having more of this because I felt that I was really drawn to having this, and they're not really second guessing it. They're just trusting their bodies, and what they're doing seems to make sense as well. So we've got the backup of the rationality and the information, but that's not necessarily leading the way anymore. They're leading the way, and they're doing that because the work they've done is centering and grounding them a bit more and calming down some of that noise, and they're learning to trust themselves.
And how are they doing that, Kirsten?
Well, one thing that I use to try and encourage that, but I'm not going to say I'm not taking full credit for their process because this takes a lot of work. But I encourage people with a practice I call 3 mindful mouthfuls. So 3 mindful mouthfuls is where at the beginning of every meal or snack or any time anybody eats or drinks, you just kind of create a little bubble of calm around you. Our imaginations are a powerful thing. So even if all hell's breaking loose, you can sometimes imagine that there's a bubble of calm. The classic kind of mindfulness stuff, feel your feet on the ground, bum on the chair, connecting with this moment. And then think about what you're about to eat or drink, look at it, engage with it, and treat the first 3 mouthfuls as a proper mindfulness activity. So how does it feel in your mouth? What are the sensations, the physical sensations of that? What does it taste like? What does it smell like if that has a smell? What does it feel like as you swallow it? And that's doing lots of things. It's waking up your digestive system for a start. It's switching on your digestive system, which is generally switched off when we're stressed. So that's a good thing to do anyway. But it's also bringing our awareness back into our bodies. So it calms down the nervous system. There's a lot of evidence around how that happens with mindfulness. I talk about 3 mindful mouthfuls because there's no science around it, but that just seems to be enough to kind of set the tone and get us into the body, whereas a whole meal of mindfulness can be a bit tedious and stressful and antisocial at the very least. So that's a good start.
3 mindful mouthfuls.
3 mindful
Sounds
mouthfuls.
great. Yeah. It's funny to say that because recently, and again, it's just this time of year, isn't it, when you have all this head clutter, even if you do have time, it feels, you feel like you don't because, it's just so much in your head. And I have been sitting down and practicing what I preach, with my meals and putting my phone so I'm not tempted to look on Instagram or reply to messages and trying to look out the window and just eat the food. Because the moment you start looking at a screen, you don't even taste the food.
Exactly.
You chew, chomp, chomp, chomp. You're probably not enough chewing, swallow, chomp, 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 swallow. And you expect your body to feel really well. And you might have the most amazing food on your plate. But again, we know it's all about how you digest the food and absorb it. It's not just about, getting it down your gullet, is it? There's a lot more to it than that. So
exactly. And also when you're in that space, what then starts to happen is you get to start to hear some of the feedback from your body as well, which might be not the kind of literal voices in your head, but you know how in the summer you don't want hot food, and in the winter you don't want a salad. It's that simple feeling around that you might get some more feelings around like the food that you're actually eating, like, oh, not now, or this feels really great. And you can tap into that when you're shopping for food as well. What are you really drawn towards? What are you kind of like physically repelled by, even just gently? And you get more sensitive to those messages So actually, used to talk about listening to your body, and people would say, well, what does that actually mean? But this practice of 3 mindful mouthfuls helps people to actually get to that place, it seems.
Start thinking about that, guys. 3 mindful mouthfuls. Yeah, brilliant. So, Kirsten, can we move on to your sort of, your mushrooms, your research, the sort of therapeutic use of mushrooms? Your masters on mushrooms, gut microbiota and cancer, it seems fascinating to me. What drew you to the study of mushrooms in the first place?
I have been increasingly intrigued by medicinal mushrooms in the recent, probably more so in the last 10 years, I would say. And I've been learning more about them and starting to use them a lot more and really seeing the benefit and seeing more research as well. A lot of the research, most of the research currently is kind of preclinical. So that's in the laboratory, either on cells or on mice, that kind of thing. But there is some research on human beings. With things like cancer specifically, the research on human beings is still limited. There are bits and pieces out there. A lot of it is around prevention of side effects during things like chemotherapy and radiotherapy. But there's enough to kind of really get me interested in the beta glucans and the terpenoids and other active compounds in the mushrooms, and how a lot of these have been studied for their anti-cancer benefit. And in things like, you put them into tumours that have been grafted onto mice, or you put them into cultured cancer cells in the laboratory, and they seem to have a really anti-cancer effect. But what then intrigued me was when I found out that we don't really absorb them very well. And that's just such a it seems to be repeated in nutrition a lot. It's like I've always been really excited about curcuminoids in turmeric and how they seem to have anti-cancer properties in many different ways as well. So apoptosis, angiogenesis, lots of different ways they can prevent tumor progression. But again, they're not absorbed very well. And then the same thing to happen with quercetin and, other polyphenols. And I was like, oh gosh, there's something going on here. And then I got intrigued about mushrooms and polyphenols as well being prebiotic. So they are absorbed by the gut microbiome, or they're metabolized by the gut microbiome too. So the microbes, the gut bacteria, can ferment them and produce metabolites like short-chain fatty acids, like butyrate, for example, and acetate and propionate.
Aren't they? Are super advantageous for the gut lining and the health of the gut. Yeah.
The health of the gut, but also they can be absorbed into the body.
Okay.
And have been shown to have anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and anti-cancer benefits as well. And I was like, oh, okay, what's going on here? Is it that we're not absorbing things like beta glucans and so on, but our gut microbes are, and they're putting them to good use, and we're absorbing the short-chain fatty acids, or the short-chain fatty acids are having a beneficial impact both in the gut and systemically throughout the body? I wonder if anybody's looking at this. So I carried out a literature review, and it seems that people had started to look at that in the previous 6 years. So this is very, very new. And I was only looking at research that looked at the mushrooms and the gut microbiome and cancer all together in the same experiments. So I found 23 studies, and I think 20 of those were mouse studies. One was in silico, which is computer modeling and AI. That took me like 17 times to read before I even understood it, but that was a huge learning curve, just getting through that paper and getting some good information out of that paper. But yeah, it's really intriguing. And the conclusion I came to at the end is, yes, this is really feasible, that this is what's going on. And we've got loads of data now on mice, and which is great because mice have very similar gut microbiomes to us, but there are major differences as well. So we need to gather more data on humans, and now's the time. And it is starting to happen. So, for example, Heifers de Terra are starting to look at this with human studies.
This is a brand of
Mushroom
medicinal
brand.
mushrooms, yeah.
Yes. I've been looking to see if there's any way I could possibly get funding to do some clinical research in this. And whilst I've been doing that, I've come across other people's similar research, not necessarily with medicinal mushrooms, but with things like fish oils and other polyphenols. So with the science is starting to look at this, and it's fascinating. And I think it's brilliant how we're starting to join up the dots a little bit more in this way.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And I think that's kind of coming out now, isn't it? Through, we've been talking about the microbiome, and this is good for your microbiome, and not really understanding quite what the mechanism is. But now it's, what those bugs do to these, these beta glucans, and how they transform them, and then how that has an effect on your immune system. It is absolutely fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, as we're mapping all of this a lot more, just getting an understanding, a deep understanding of how it's not just about individual microbes or individual short chain fatty acids. It's about how they operate together, how they function as communities, and how they interact with our complex biochemistry as well. So there's a lot going on, and it's brilliant that science is starting to understand that we need to look at lots of different parameters together, and that's quite hard to do. And that is one of my hopes for AI. I know there's a lot of it's easy to focus on, and there are a lot of risks and dangers and things to be wary of with AI. And I'm fully aware of all of those. But I think in this kind of scenario, it could be the things that just speeds up this research and can take account of so many different variables all in one go in the way that human brains can't. So let's see where we end up with that.
Yeah, I think AI for medical research is such a tool, isn't it? That's going to really, speed things up. Yeah. So, you talk about, medicinal mushrooms, but I know when I came to your talk that you did talk about how you support your clients, on a sort of practical level. Can you tell us a bit more about, what you use and how you use it? And I mean, obviously in a kind of just the headlines, but so we can understand, what might be beneficial. And of course, it's not just, as we said before we started recording, we all know someone who's had cancer, friends, family. I lost my mum to cancer. One of my best friends had cancer. When you get into your 50s, it's more prevalent. So we're all really interested in what we can do to lower our risk. But also, if someone who's listening's had a cancer diagnosis, maybe going through chemotherapy, any information you might be able to share with us that would help.
Yeah, well, the 3 mindful mouthfuls is a brilliant way to start, because then that really helps get us out of our heads and feeling our way through what's going on, which is where we're really going to get our biggest insights and learnings from. I think blood sugar. So it's been a hot topic in recent years, hasn't it? Blood sugar, but it's something that I do think is incredibly important. Because if our blood sugar is stable, our emotions are stable, so we can process and deal with things a lot better. But also our physiological processes are a lot more stable, and we're less likely to shoot into a fear response as well if our blood sugar is stable. So that's something that I've always seen as a priority, really, is how to get that. Our blood sugar is always going to have its peaks and troughs, but how to make sure that is not just flooring us all of the time with too many blood sugar kind of extreme peaks and then flat on the floor, and insulin resistance that can eventually end up in. There are lots of ways that we can look after our blood sugar, but my favourite is to have a protein-rich breakfast as early in the day as possible. And I've seen over the last 20 plus years of my practice that for the most part, when I've made sure that that's in there, sometimes that's the only change people make, and it can ripple out and have changes, have a beneficial impact on all sorts of levels. It might be that focus, concentration, mood, energy. It might be that headaches are less frequent. It might be, that lots of physical things that can benefit from that too. But in recent years, with time-restricted eating patterns, intermittent fasting, people have been much more tempted to skip breakfast and start their eating day at 12 instead. So I encourage people to bring that window earlier. And I do so because of that experience. And also because if you look at things like traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, they've been aware of like the importance of circadian rhythms and circadian eating for much longer than we have. In the last very few years, there has been more research into chrononutrition, so the timing of when we eat. And it seems to be vindicating that approach. So that's something that I still really recommend. So putting that protein-rich breakfast on. And I explain it as, especially if you feel like the rug's been pulled away from underneath your feet, it's like putting a new rug down every morning to start your day on. And like I said, physically and emotionally, that seems to have a really beneficial impact. And it also means that people are snacking less, people are making healthier decisions later in the day because their blood sugar's not bouncing around all over the place. And having an earlier supper instead means that there's a really nice long gap between the evening meal and bedtime. So people aren't going to bed whilst they're trying to digest a meal. So that's a win as well. And then having that longer overnight fast for many people is very beneficial.
So are you a kind of advocate of 3 meals a day?
For most people, yeah, that structure seems to work really well and provide long enough gaps in between. Everyone's different though. So if somebody finds a structure that works better for them, that's great. Some people genuinely do seem to do well on a later breakfast. But I would say that most people who think they do well on a later breakfast, it just feels like that because either they ate too late the night before and they're still digesting dinner, or because they're so stressed and running around in the morning that their digestive system isn't waking up and they just can't face food because they're stressed.
Yeah. When you're stressed, your appetite just goes out the window.
Yeah.
Which is, I was stressed about something recently, where it kind of triggered me and I thought, I haven't been triggered like that for a while, and horrible. And, I didn't want to eat but I wasn't hungry. And that was a one-off for me. I'm, less triggered these days and a bit more grounded. But, I see some of my lovely clients that are busy all the time and they are slightly in that, they are in that kind of chronic cortisol and they're not hungry. And then things start to go wrong, whether it be weight gain because, their body's dysregulated, their metabolism slowed down, maybe there's some inflammation. And when they do eat, they're sort of, maybe like you said, they're eating late into the evening. And that's when they're having all their calories kind of like, after 6 o'clock, after 7, after 8 even sometimes. And then the body just becomes dysregulated, doesn't it?
Exactly. And that kind of message of, and not eating for a long time, you're contributing to the body wondering, oh, why isn't there food coming in? Is there a famine? What's going on here? And that's a stressful message. And it's a message to, oh, we better hold on to some of the fat that we've got then. So I think a steady structured eating plan is a really good thing. And studies into chrononutrition are starting to bear that out as well. So there's studies looking at if you're, how that timing of eating has an impact on the gut microbiome. So we're back to that again.
Yeah.
Which then has an impact on how well you sleep as well. And sleep is a massive thing for people going through perimenopause and postmenopause as well. So if the timing of when we're eating can have a big impact on that, then let's do it. There's the earliest studies on chrononutrition were actually looking at middle-aged women who wanted to diet but found themselves eating too much, and having that protein-rich breakfast meant that actually those women were eating less as a result. So that's where the studies started, but now there are a lot more wide-ranging studies, and not just on women as well. And it's really pointing in this direction. We work well with a circadian structure, whether that's food, light, activity as well, when the timing of our exercise, all of it, we work better when we have a circadian structure to that.
I don't know about you, but that bears out in my clinic so much, the structure. And again, I think there are the odd women that do well at 11 or 12. And I kind of went towards all that information and all that data about, 2 meals a day. And I think it works quite well for men. I just don't see it working as well for women. The odd woman that likes it and actually feels good on it is a bit of a unicorn. I think most of us, you get that stable rug down, which is a brilliant way of thinking about it. I always say to people, get that foundational breakfast in, and it does set you up for the day. And if you do have to miss lunch on the odd occasion, you'll still have better stabilized blood sugar. But people that are eating scantily, women, generally are much more up and down. And of course, blood sugar affects, not just your energy, but your mood. And you can get, like you said, if you're having a low blood sugar, I get so triggered. And sometimes at the weekend, I let myself go a little bit longer. And, sometimes when it happens to you, like, that was a bit daft. I've done about 14 and a half hours now, and I'm feeling a bit crabby and I'm being a bit snappy. And, it's not my mood. It's, it's affecting my mood, and it's something I can do something about. So
Absolutely.
Can you talk to us? Yeah, so that's really a good message. Thanks, Kirsten. But can you talk to us a little bit about how that blood sugar, dysregulation where you're getting peaks and troughs, how that might, increase our risk of cancer?
Yeah, so we often talk about how cancer is a metabolic disease. So this is very much entrenched in this. I think there are cancer is a very complex disease. There are a lot of things going on, and it is obviously all at the same time. But one of the things that really stands out is what's happening with our energy production in our mitochondria in our cells and the whole process of energy production. So the simplest way of putting it is we can switch between a kind of way of making energy and getting through the day, which is largely sugar-based or carbohydrate-based, and great, there's nothing wrong with that. And it encourages growth and proliferation, which is also great. It's what helps our healthy turnover of cells all of the time, and helps our hair to grow and our nails to grow and things like that. And then we have another, we can switch that into another kind of metabolism, which is more kind of rest and clear out what's going on, and just not so proliferative. And that happens when we're fasting, or when we're doing some kind of fasting mimicking approach, such as like ketogenic diets, for example. What we need to do is to be able to switch between the two. So we call that metabolic flexibility. And if we are continually snacking through the day, then we're not practicing that flexibility. We're keeping into the proliferation and growth, and we're not doing enough clearing.
Can I just clarify that these two ways of metabolizing, basically it's either using glucose for energy or using ketones?
Yeah, or we can also use proteins for energy as well, and we can use lipids for energy in a way that's not ketone driven. But essentially, yes, that's probably the easiest way to think about it.
To understand it, yeah. So we want to be able to do both.
Exactly.
Ketones for energy, or use the glucose, and this sort of switching from one to the other with flexibility.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's a lot of work being done to understand this, and actually Dawn Waldron, who was also speaking at the event that we met at, she has a Substack that's all about this, which is really fantastic. But yes, so if we're continually doing one and we're not doing the other, then we're not switching. We don't have necessarily that capacity, and we need to be doing both. And if we get as I say, it's not as simple as that. There are lots of other complicated aspects that hook in around this, but part of building up to, or part of the process of getting stuck in the sugar feeding one is eventually we'll get insulin resistance, which, and we'll also get lower levels of oxygen going to the cells. We'll get more oxidation going on in the cells, perhaps fewer antioxidants. There's lots of things that will happen as a result of that. And there are lots of books about that. There are lots of papers on that. So you can read about all the complexities of what that happens and the various different ways that can have an impact on cancer progression. And that's part of what we believe is going on. So a really important, it's almost seen as a bit of a golden grail at the moment, is how can we affect that and reverse that, the kind of processes that the cancer cells can switch into to just be proliferative all of the time. And it's really difficult because cancer cells are like any other human cell in the body. They want to survive and they're very adaptable. So we can try and change what's going on in the environment to kind of cut them off or starve them or kill them. And they'll go, oh, right, okay, well, we'll adapt then so that we can survive in a different way. So, it's not just one thing that we need to address here, but that is an interesting one and it is a fundamental one. But also if we step back and look at the bigger picture, as I was saying before, with blood sugar, when blood sugar keeps peaking and dropping and peaking and dropping, and as you pointed out, we just feel emotionally affected by that. And we can feel how it's pushing our stress buttons. And when we're being put into that stressed state, that in itself is affecting our immune system and how our immune system's behaving, and affecting our metabolism and affecting our hormonal balance and affecting our ability to clear carcinogenic toxins via the liver, for example. So that our whole body is involved in protecting ourselves against cancer. And we're really good at it. We are so good at it, actually. So if the right conditions are there, we can continue to protect ourselves. The unfortunate situation that we're in, however, is that we have built for ourselves this extremely toxic environment. And every week I get at least one person who's just had a new diagnosis who's really upset because they've done all the right things. And they're like, I've been exercising, I've been eating well, I've been doing this, I've been doing that. Why have I got this diagnosis? And it's because we can reduce our risk, but we can't yet eliminate our risk. So if there's anybody listening who is beating themselves up for getting a cancer diagnosis, which I did as well, I thought, this is my fault. I brought this on myself. I've not been looking after myself. I've been, on a self-destructive path for a while. Of course, I'm going to get cancer. I've done this to myself. It's important to take responsibility in changing how we move forward. But that's very different from blame. Responsibility and blame are very different things. And much of the blame needs to go to, dare I say, capitalism and the society that we have built up for ourselves.
Yeah, it's all about money, isn't it? And people working harder to make more money, to buy more things, to keep the economy going, to have more holidays, because they're so stressed out, they need to fly. I'm just as bad, but fly around the world to lay on a beach because they're so stressed out. And it's a bit nuts, isn't it? If the aliens are looking down, they're going to be like, my goodness, they've got it so wrong.
Ridiculous. And even if you look at that, we can look at our own personal contribution to carcinogens in our environment. And yes, we can do something about some of those. But there are massive corporations who are not being held accountable for the pollution that they're putting into our environment, the carcinogens they're putting into our air, our water, our food. The accountability is not there, and it's getting harder, not easier, to put that into place. So we are trying to run against the wind. So we have to work harder, unfortunately, But what's the
Work
most,
harder on our health, you mean, just trying to
well,
shore
yeah,
ourselves up?
the most important thing we need to work harder on is actually what we keep coming back to is stress resilience. So thinking about all of this just makes me, I can feel my body getting stressed about it. And I cannot change this situation overnight that we are living in, this world that we're living in. And I'm allowed to be angry about it. But I then have to recognize that, okay, this anger, I need to do something with it. I need to channel that proactively, not let it become a stress that has an impact on my body. So
Tough
repeat,
one. That's a tough call.
isn't it just? So our biggest responsibility to ourselves is our mindfulness practices and our going out into to the countryside and our meeting up with our friends and having a laugh and doing those things that that we know it will be different for everybody. Sitting there reading a book, like shutting out the world, or going out there and connecting with the world, whatever you need right now to keep you calm, stable, connected. And we have to keep repeatedly doing that. That's going to be the biggest thing that we can do for our health and our sanity. And from that place, we're much more likely to then be able to be proactive about making changes.
Going back to the mushrooms, just because you talk brilliantly about all these topics, and you also so much from your research. But if we want to use mushrooms as another add-on that might give us some protection, help that sort of cellular metabolism work more efficiently. Are there any mushrooms that you would recommend, or just how do we start practically to sort of bring some of these mushrooms into our life? I know I've done a bit of a swerve there from where we were, but I know people are listening are going to want to know about the mushrooms as well.
Yeah, no, and it's a good one because actually one of the ways that we can support our stress resilience is by keeping our gut microbiome happy. It really is. I speak a lot in my book about the gut, adrenal, brain triangle. So it's not just the gut brain, but the adrenals, which release our stress hormones, are involved in that triangle as well. So there's an axis there. So it's really relevant. And there are mushrooms like lion's mane and reishi, for example, Ganoderma lucidum, and lion's mane is Hericium Irenaeus, I think.
Very impressive.
Something like that.
The lion's mane, you see them in supplements, don't you? And you also see them. I've seen them in a few shops.
Yeah,
they're funny looking, aren't they?
Yeah, they're difficult to cook. I know Tom Baxter says, slice them thin, dry fry them. And there's a restaurant in London that makes a kind of vegan foie gras out of them.
I remember you mentioned this. That sounds fascinating. Yeah.
But I haven't yet found a successful way to cook with lion's mane. But they do have components that can be really great for cognitive health and mental health. And, reishi is so anti-inflammatory and, calming, which is going to help with calming the nervous system as well, and with sleep. But a lot of those things, a lot of those specific agents you need to really concentrate them. So you won't necessarily get them just from eating lion's mane. You will need a really good supplement. And by good, I mean one that, a lot of supplements out there don't actually contain much of the active ingredients. And there's no way of knowing because they don't even measure them. So I generally only recommend companies that really do measure the active ingredients in their supplements and that they're good enough quality. So like Heifers doTERRA I mentioned before, and Bristol
Heifers doTERRA, yeah.
The Bristol Fungarium is Tom Baxter's company. They're really great, and there are one or two others out there as well. But when you're eating any mushrooms, you're still getting lots of benefits. So whether it's like portobello mushrooms, chestnut mushrooms, white mushrooms, any kind of mushrooms, they are all rich in polysaccharides, which are prebiotic, so which will help to feed the gut microbiome, which will help to keep it in balance and help it to do. The gut microbiome is the front line of the immune system, and it helps to regulate the nervous system as well. So as we're keeping blood sugar stable. So the two combined, and some, mushrooms might even help with that as well. but essentially any mushrooms that you eat are going to be really beneficial. So just having, unless of course you're allergic to mushrooms, but yeah, so having mushrooms regularly in your diet. I have mushrooms most days in my diet, and they're not particularly special, expensive, exotic mushrooms, but occasionally they are. And I try and mix them up a little bit, so I'm getting different types. So it's really easy to do that. You can even grow your own mushrooms. You can forage mushrooms for free if you know what you're doing, or you're with somebody who knows what they're doing. And please don't over forage areas as well, because nature needs the mushrooms just as much as we do, if not more. So there are, some caveats around that. But yeah, it just eat mushrooms all the time. But then specifically,
really, so you have mushrooms every day, Kirsten?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I probably have them 3 or 4 times a week. I always have a punnet of mushrooms, and sometimes I'll just saute them. I have a lovely recipe that I make with sort of lemon and some kefir and some parmesan, and it's so yummy.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah, I must put that on Instagram at some point.
Yeah.
But you know what it's like doing recipes on Instagram? They take a long time, don't they? They're a bit of a time sponge.
I'm writing a book about mushrooms, but I'm getting my favourite holistic chef, Hayley North, to write the recipes.
Oh, amazing.
And also to contribute to a lot of the book as well, because she has so much wisdom to offer. So that will hopefully, keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah, because that's it, isn't it? It's keeping them interesting.
Yeah.
But even sauteing them just in olive oil or a little bit of butter, delicious.
Really delicious. And you can use mushroom tinctures and powders in cooking as well.
Really?
So
I haven't tried that.
Heat quite well.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah. So most things will say whether or not if they can't, but yeah.
So could you use reishi, for example, like a teaspoon of reishi in your casserole or your stir fry?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or your gravy or your smoothie. Or whatever you're doing, your hot chocolate. It's a really good one. Yeah. Anything that's already got like a nice earthy texture, a flavour to it works really well.
And would you, like reishi, I'm thinking now in my cupboard downstairs, I'm probably like you, I get sent a lot of free supplements, and I was using reishi quite a lot, and I'm sort of using it daily, and then I'll put something down and I'll, something else, because you can't be taking 20 different things every single day, can you? It's just not realistic. But with something like reishi, would you recommend having it every day, or is it finding a mushroom that's right for you? I mean,
Reishi's a really good one. I mean, it's been studied a lot. It's got loads of really fantastic benefits. It's very anti-inflammatory. It's just wonderful. I would say that would be one that there would be. I don't see a problem with having that one every day.
Recently got sent some chaga.
Yes.
CHAGA. What's good about that one?
I like chaga because it's a little bit more closer to home than some of the Asian ones, and sometimes it's nice to think, okay, what do we have growing in our environment naturally? I mean, when I say closer to home, I'm talking kind of Russia and parts of Europe and things like that. It's really good for resilience in the immune system. That's what I really like it for. It's great for digestive health as well, intestinal health. In very, very small numbers of cases or there have been small numbers of cases where long term it could be that we don't know if chaga is safe for the kidneys being taken long term. There's a question mark over that.
Oh, really? Okay.
But in kind of short term, or having some chaga for phases every now and again.
So if you get a sort of winter flu, it would be good to take chaga for a week or two,
or to help avoid a winter flu.
To keep your immune system resilient.
Shiitake is really great for the immune system as well. So for that, and you can buy shiitake mushrooms in a lot of supermarkets. Also getting shiitake extracts too, and reishi as well is fantastic for that.
And lion's mane, you see a lot of lion's mane supplements now as well, don't you?
And they're being particularly marketed to menopause, perimenopause and menopause, because of the cognitive health benefits. So things like short-term memory, concentration, that kind of thing. which, yeah, that's a key benefit that a lot of people find. It's also fantastic for intestinal health as well. So isn't it interesting, because we talk about that gut-brain connection, and here we have a mushroom that's really lovely for both. So yeah, that's a really nice one that's very easy to use as well. There's a lion's mane chocolate that I'm probably going to be giving a few people. So but yeah, so not just for people going through menopause, but generally speaking, that's a really nice one to include.
And this chocolate, is there a brand? Can you mention?
Yeah, the Bristol Fungarian one.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yes. Bristol Fungarian. I will leave a link in the show notes if anyone's listening. He's Tom Baxter. He was really interesting. He grows mushrooms and
he
has
knows
a really
his
brilliant
stuff,
understanding. He does know his stuff. Yeah. And what I took from him that was from that seminar was that, so many supplements that you buy off the shelf, they have very little in them.
Yeah.
So you really don't waste your money unless you really, believe in the company and you've seen some evidence or you like their ethos. Yeah. And they're not going to sell you something that's just powder, really.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're not going to absorb or do anything with, just waste your money. So it sounds to me like, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on taking my reishi, and I might take some lion's mane in between days and maybe some chaga, to support, immunity. Yeah, brilliant advice.
Yeah, add a few shiitake mushrooms to your stews.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm on that. But I think that's a really good message for people to get those shiitake mushrooms. They take a little bit more cooking, I find, but they're absolutely delicious. And I know you talked very confidently about how you help patients with cancer and mushrooms. Can you tell us a bit about that and some idea of what might help them?
Yeah, so I do regularly suggest mushrooms and mushroom blends for people going through cancer treatment, depending on the treatment. But for most treatments, particularly chemotherapy and radiotherapy, it's one of the few supplements that I know I can safely recommend. Mushrooms have been licensed for use alongside conventional cancer treatment in China and Japan for 30 years. So there's that, more than 30 years now. So there's like a few decades there of clinical use, so we know it's safe. And there have been various studies showing that it can help with side effects, help reduce side effects, and possibly also improve outcomes as well. There's also some recent research about obviously I'm really fascinated by the gut microbiome. A lot of treatments, so chemo and radio, for example, really batter the gut microbiome. And yet there's been studies showing that people's gut microbiome going like pre-treatment, the state of their microbiome can be a predictor for how well the treatment, the effect of the treatment is. So, and there have also been studies about how taking probiotics during treatment can potentially improve outcomes and be a really good thing to do. But then everyone got really twitchy about using probiotics during treatments because of a couple of situations where things went wrong. There is the argument that those were kind of extreme situations and not the norm. And there's enough research for it to show a real strong case for benefit. But we're in that difficult place at the moment of shouldn't I recommend probiotics during these kinds of treatments? If the aim is to help support the gut microbiome, then mushrooms will do that. So for me, that's one of the key reasons that I get people taking mushrooms pre and during treatment, is to look after that gut microbiome, make sure it's in as good a place as it can be pre and during treatment. And then there'll be other aspects of the mushrooms that may be coming in to be helpful as well.
Yeah, and I recall, Kirsten, that you spoke about a few of your clients that had taken the mushrooms alongside the chemotherapy and how well they'd kind of, navigated the whole process.
Yeah, and some of them had like a session without them and then started taking the mushrooms and really noticed the difference. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's interesting, and this is really just anecdotal observation from me. I haven't kind of made any kind of formal study of any of this myself, but I'm encouraged enough to continue to work in this way.
And when you say they sort of, that they've benefited from taking them, what's been helpful in actual symptoms or?
Yeah, reduction in whatever side effect, like a massive reduction in whatever side effects that they've
Okay.
felt. So
Yeah.
including things like, fatigue and nausea. So the main ones, but also kind of other less common side effects as well. So that seems to have been a real game changer.
Yeah.
I mean, that could easily be the placebo effect as well. But when you've got the kind of even preclinical science on mushrooms to say, well, actually, there are some mechanisms in here that can support what you're seeing.
It's quite compelling.
It is compelling, and it's compelling enough to want more research on humans going through chemotherapy, not just looking at side effect reduction, because that has been looked at and it does seem to be a thing, but also looking at everything else that's going on.
Yeah,
including what's going on with the gut microbiome.
Yeah. Okay. And because I know you see a lot of people that are, have had cancer or going through treatment, what would you say to someone at the moment who is facing that? They've either got a diagnosis or they're, kind of looking after themselves sort of post treatment. What would you want them to hear?
You don't have to do this on your own. You may feel that it's, that you're a lone warrior in this, and there are aspects of this that only you will feel and that you will have to, go through, but you can ask for support, and there's lots of support out there. Even if you're 5, 10, 15 years post diagnosis and you're still feeling physically or emotionally affected, which a lot of people do, everyone thinks, everything's gone back to normal for you, but it hasn't. There is help out there for you, and increasingly so as well. I'm have a lot to do with Yes to Life, which is an integrative oncology cancer charity. Their website is yestolife.org.uk. And they have a helpline. They have weekly and monthly free wellbeing sessions online. They have support groups that are just lovingly held. They have a massive directory of all sorts of wellness practitioners. It's a really good resource or starting point. They hold conferences and workshops as well. And podcasts. Robin Daly does 2 or 3 podcasts. She set it up. So it's a really lovely starting point to try and help gently navigate your way towards those kinds of help, but also the people around you as well. Make sure that you feel like you can ask people for help when you need it, and gently explain to them why you need help and what kind of help that you need. Don't do this on your own.
Yeah, good message. Don't do this on your own. And just to finish up, Kirsten, this fascinating conversation, can I just ask you what's a surprising habit or ritual that keeps you feeling strong and resilient?
Oh, surprising habit or ritual. I mean, I just do little things like I might just stick my head out the back door for 30 seconds and feel the sun or the rain or the wind on my face when I just have a moment. Or I might, one that I've done for many years that always sorts me out, whatever needs to be sorted out, is I'll just switch on the radio in the kitchen and dance. Dancing. There we go. That's
dancing. Brilliant. And I think sometimes when you're feeling whatever, you've got to move your body, haven't you? Get those emotions moving around. And
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. It's been, honestly, I could talk to you for hours. You've just so much knowledge and so much wisdom as well. And I'm sure, my listeners will really want to know more about you, connect with you. maybe buy your brilliant book. Can you tell us a bit more how they can do that? And I will also add it to my show notes, but yeah.
Thank you. So it's called Nutrition Brought to Life. And you can buy it online in all sorts of places. But if you go to my website, which is kirstenchick.com, then there's links there to all of the places that you can buy it. But all of the usual places that you might think of, plus the publishers sell it direct as well. And their website is there too.
Okay. And if
you
somebody...
can buy it from, you can buy it from Yes to Life as well.
Ah, brilliant. Yes to Life. Okay. And if somebody wanted to connect with you, can they connect with you on Instagram?
Yes. So my Instagram is kirsten.chick. I have 2 Instagrams. So I have another one, which is kind of jokingly called The Kirsten Chick, which is my private personal one. But if you see the one that's actually got my face on it, Kirsten.chick, that's the one that I generally engage with the public from. And then I have my Facebook also, is Kirsten Chick, Nutritional Therapist.
And lastly, are you taking on new clients, Kirsten?
Yeah, I am. So there's a link on my website to my booking page. So you can see there what availability I have and, read about how it all works.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're really welcome. It's just that we've gone to a lot of places, haven't we?
We have. Yeah, it's been brilliant. It's kind of like, Nutrition 101. You're going to get so much from this episode. I've got so much from this episode. Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thanks, Amanda.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So let me tell you about my brand new short form podcast, Be Healthy with Amanda. And what it is, it's a 20-minute episode that's going to drop every Monday morning. And it's designed to kickstart your week with kind of, calm, clarity, motivation. And it's just going to be focused on 2 achievable health objectives that you can implement that week. So it's kind of like a weekly reset to help you feel less overwhelmed and more in control. And you'll also have access to my favourite tried and tested supplements and foods with an exclusive 15% discount. So it's kind of like, we will be our own little tribe here. And it's the kind of coaching you'd get from working with me long term. But I'm packaging up into these weekly 20-minute episodes, and it's just going to cost you £5.99 a month. So this is a space and a moment for you, a simple rhythm that I hope, can help you build these healthy habits week by week. And gently, sustainable, and with me in your ear sort of cheering you on. Because if you're anything like me, obviously, with nutrition, I don't need motivation for that. I'm fully in, I'm totally on, and, it's where I put a lot of energy. However, there are other things in my life where I do need more motivation, and I recognize that I need it weekly. So I'm trying to find a solution for you that's going to be ongoing. It's going to keep you going. It's going to be motivational, and you're going to keep learning, but it's going to be linear, and it's going to make sense, and it's not going to be so random. So if that is of interest to you, you will find the link in the show notes, and you can just click on that and sign up. Thank you for your company. I know there are so many podcasts out there, so my promise to you is no nonsense, practical advice that adds real value to your life. So if you enjoyed this episode, you know the drill. Now, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, follow, or click subscribe, or even send it to someone who might benefit from this information. It truly helps me grow the podcast and keeps me going. And if you'd like to know more about my own personal approach to food, HRT, movement stress, and self-connection, my book is available in paperback. I'd also love to hear from you, so don't hesitate to leave a comment or get in touch. And that just leaves me to say I am sending lots of love and light from my midlife goddess to yours.